Lucky, a boy lost in a wildlife sanctuary, when suddenly a giant lion approaches him. But then, the unimaginable happens, and the boy cries. From that moment, Lucky begins an adventure that many would find unbelievable. This mighty lion stares at the boy and lets out a loud roar as it starts charging towards him. What happens next is truly unbelievable. The giant lion with its long tail swaying with each step. This lion has golden brown fur, showing its nobility. Suddenly it stops and looks straight at the boy. The boy looked at the lion with two eyes full of tears, his swollen cheeks red from crying. The lion stretched its neck and raised its head, letting out a loud and fierce roar, its sharp fangs bared in a display of grandeur, showing off its nobility on the dusty road lined with trees. Its sharp claws were hidden beneath its sturdy paws, protecting it from any potential threats. The boy had nowhere to run from this looming danger. The lion roared again, staring at the boy with a fierce and determined gaze. This lion's name is Hope, and she has lived at the Safari Wildlife Reserve after being adopted by a man named Eric, a close friend of mine. I'm Tony, and I've stood side by side with Eric in every journey of protection. Both of us work as wildlife rangers, saving animals in need. Eric found Hope lying next to her mother's lifeless body in a dangerous situation, under attack by poachers, when she was just a newborn cub. Hope was too young to survive without his mother, which is why Eric, a man with a deep love for animals, did not hesitate to adopt the boy. He stayed up late and woke up early, sometimes even staying up all night to feed Hope. Eric and I had worked at the wildlife sanctuary since we were 15 years old, and he understood the importance of introducing Hope to other animals as soon as possible before he became too dependent on humans. The vast sanctuary was home to hundreds of lions, and Eric's only hope was that one of the experienced and nurturing lionesses would adopt Hope as her own. For this reason, as soon as Hope was old enough, we entrusted him to a lioness. With her extensive experience, we judged her to be a very strong and serious protector. At the same time, she was one of the most affectionate lionesses Eric had ever encountered, a harmonious combination that he hoped would benefit Hope. Eric thought that Hope might not accept this arrangement, but to his surprise, the lioness and Hope bonded in a truly amazing way. Eric was delighted with the outcome, and over the following years, he watched Hope grow up and gradually separate from the pride. Male lions are solitary creatures, and leaving their pride for the first time is always a dangerous ordeal. Eric knew that Hope would have a better chance of surviving in the sanctuary, but there was still a chance that he would become the biggest and strongest lion in the sanctuary. However, Eric couldn't help but worry about Hope. He continued to watch him carefully and closely. Even though Eric had rescued Hope when he was just a cub, he always felt a special bond with him and wanted to ensure his survival. Although Hope began his life with many dangerous challenges, he gradually asserted his place in the sanctuary. Hope's courage, dignified demeanor, and large size quickly made him one of the strongest and most agile lions in the pride. Most male lions dominate in the reserve, and with many years of experience, we've observed that Hope has won several battles. It wasn't easy for him, but it's part of the survival instinct in their community. And for the animals living in the reserve, it's much like how they would live in the wild. The only difference in living in this reserve is that they are safer from poachers, and if needed, there's a veterinary team to ensure the survival of the animals, which is a top priority, especially since many species are listed as critically endangered. Recently, we've faced some issues with poachers infiltrating the reserve. Although no animals have been injured yet, the most important thing now is to strengthen the boundaries around the reserve and prevent poachers from entering. Because of this, even though Eric sometimes feels uneasy about Hope, he knows that he is in the best place, as the reserve has done everything possible to protect them. Crossing these fragile boundaries, Hope the lion would find himself facing a crying child. The solitary lion woke up from his sleep as the sun was rising, and lions are most active during the cooler parts of the day. At first, the sound of Hope's growl echoed, waking another lazy lion that stretched and got ready. It was time to hunt for food, but Hope seemed to be managing quite well on his own. The giant lion stood up, stretching his massive legs forward, but something made him stop. A sound carried by the wind, along with a familiar scent like milk, caught his attention. The lion followed his senses, and suddenly he looked ahead on the dirt path. Hope discovered a chubby, fair-skinned boy, seemingly lost, crying with tears streaming down his face, soaking his shirt. Hope moved towards the child sitting in the middle of the road, wearing a blue hat and a red vest. The boy was very young, and his cries were loud, filled with fear and distress. Sensing this, Hope maintained a safe distance. The lion remained cautious, yet curious, slowly crouching and circling around the boy to observe his reaction. Not for a moment did Hope take his eyes off the crying child, whose sobs were growing louder and more intense. The sound was grating and uncomfortable to Hope, and his behavior began to shift dramatically with every passing second. The lion now paced back and forth, seemingly restless, as if unsure how to handle the situation. Suddenly, Hope stopped, detecting a new scent in the air. Hope sniffed, and the golden fur on his body stood on end. He stared intently at the boy, whose face was flushed with red cheeks and eyes swollen from crying. Hope growled, a terrifying sound that echoed throughout the forest, displaying his sharp teeth. The boy was shocked and startled, his crying instantly stopping. Hope's anger erupted uncontrollably, visible in the lion's proud, fierce eyes. The boy noticed that Hope wasn't looking at him, but rather past him. Then, without warning, Hope lunged at the boy, leaping over his head. Sorry for the interruption before we continue the story. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's very important to us. Thank you so much. The terrifying sound of heavy thuds made the boy turn around, immediately drawing his attention to a second lion. Hope stood taller than the boy, roaring and scratching the ground with his massive, sharp claws. The two lions collided in a fierce, lightning-fast battle, but the second lion was no match for Hope. As Eric walked down the dirt road, unaware of the unbelievable scene unfolding before him, he saw the second lion desperately struggling to break free from Hope's sharp claws. We quickly sneaked around the corner of the bushes to observe and noticed that the two lions fighting wasn't an unusual sight in our line of work. However, when Eric saw the boy just a few steps away from the pride of lions, he felt dizzy and overwhelmed, as though he might vomit everything in his stomach. He couldn't believe that such a small child had made it into the reserve. Yet despite the shock, he remained composed and quickly assessed the situation, certain that the boy was in serious danger. Eric gathered all his strength and sprinted towards the boy, moving as fast as the wind. However, what he hadn't anticipated was that the second lion, after struggling to break free from Hope's powerful claws, managed to escape and awkwardly limped away, conceding defeat. As Hope roared in triumph, displaying his mighty regal victory, he turned back toward the boy. Eric had a special admiration for Hope, more than anything in the world. But if Hope, this lion, whom Eric trusted, were to harm the boy, it would be a disaster for the entire reserve. But what happened next nearly shocked Eric. The giant lion, Hope, suddenly lay down beside the boy, his massive body like a mountain, forming a protective barrier around the child. His eyes scanned the surroundings, vigilantly watching his territory to ensure nothing else could harm the boy. What Eric had just witnessed was not a fight between two lions over food, but rather Hope protecting the child. Hope had attacked the other lion to save the boy. Eric recalled the past, remembering how Hope had cried, whimpering beside his mother's lifeless body. He wished he had seen something in the crying child that made him empathize with whatever had happened. Eric, with his extensive experience protecting the reserve, was truly astonished. He hoped he had assessed Hope correctly because, despite the lion's strong protective nature, he still needed to get the boy out of harm's way and carefully consider the situation. What would he have done if Hope hadn't allowed him near the child? Eric, the only person Hope trusted at the reserve, had spent countless hours tracking and following the lion, never once disturbed by its presence. Hope always knew Eric was there, but it seemed as though the lion still held on to the memory of Eric rescuing and caring for him, which led Hope to treat him with a special kind of respect. Still, Hope hoped that this bond would work to his advantage as Eric moved closer. The massive lion observed Eric carefully, taking in his every movement, studying him with a long, assessing gaze. Hope stood up and began to walk away. Eric patiently waited, having passed Hope's test. He knew better than to rush forward and risk ruining everything. He would wait for Hope to be at a safe distance before approaching further. Eric gently cradled the child in his arms, with Hope standing close by. The boy seemed to be calm now, but as soon as the lion moved away, the child started crying loudly again. With no other choice, Eric softly patted the boy to calm him down. After a while, he managed to get the boy settled and made his way back to the office, his mind racing with questions. Why had the child been abandoned on the road? He was still in shock over Hope's unbelievable actions. To find answers, the quickest way was to review the security footage, hoping it might have captured something. As he watched the footage from the reserve's boundary, he hoped it would reveal something that would explain the boy's presence. Eric saw something on the footage. An old car appeared just outside the reserve's boundary. He could almost make out that the driver was a young man. After a few moments, a young woman stepped out of the car, carrying a child in her arms. She quickly looked around and seemed to spot what she was looking for, something important in the fence. After several attempts, she managed to push through and place the child on the dirt road where Eric had seen him. The woman kissed the boy on the forehead as if to say goodbye, then quickly got back into the car without the child and drove away. Eric watched the footage and saw that the boy appeared to be scared and alone, searching for his family around him. But the heartbreaking truth was that they were gone. Eric felt uneasy, wondering about the kiss on the forehead and the gentle embrace. Something told him that the young woman must have felt she had no other choice but to abandon the little boy. But why leave him inside the reserve, where he could be in danger? Did she think the security cameras would be monitored so the child would be picked up immediately? Did she believe a ranger would be nearby to rescue him? So many questions swirled in his mind, and he realized he might never get all the answers. Of course, Eric would do everything he could to find the boy's family, but something told him that they had been gone for quite some time after seeing the footage. Taking a deep breath, Eric calmed down and prepared some food for the boy. Lucky seemed to be more comfortable with him, and the boy's crying gradually subsided. Eric decided that this was a good time to try to gather some information before calling the authorities. As he talked to them, Eric couldn't help but notice Lucky curiously inspecting the food before putting it in his mouth. He paused, lost in thought, and realized something. He had saved Hope when he was just a cub after his mother died, and now he had just witnessed the same lioness protecting a child abandoned by his family. It felt like everything was back to square one, but this time, there would be no one to watch over the boy after he left the sanctuary. Hope was rescued by Eric and given the proper care and attention. The caretaker knew that desperation must have driven his parents to abandon him. Some of the villagers around the reserve were very poor, and Eric understood that raising a child was a significant financial burden. He remembered the footage he had seen of the young woman and Lucky, both of us desperately searching for the boy's family. A deep sadness filled his heart as he imagined what might happen if he left the reserve when the authorities arrived. Lucky was watching the video on Eric's phone after eating some food, and the boy seemed brighter, happier. He kept pointing outside when he heard the lion roar, and Eric couldn't help but laugh. It seemed like a bond had begun to form between the child and this majestic creature, even in this short time. Despite the challenges ahead, Eric still secretly hopes that maybe, just maybe, Lucky can find a new sense of belonging, just as Hope has found hers with the reserve. Eric asked the authorities about what would happen to the child. They explained that if they couldn't find any family members to claim the child, Lucky would be sent to an orphanage in the hope of being adopted. It seemed like there were too many changes and emotional upheavals for such a small child to endure. Eric didn't want to think too much about how this situation would affect him before he had time to process everything. But after a moment of hesitation, Eric made up his mind. He would care for the child while the authorities sorted things out. Eric had no experience in taking care of children, but Lucky had already captured his heart just as Hope had done during their time together. Despite the challenges ahead, Eric knew that he couldn't just walk away. He felt a deep responsibility, not just for the animals in the reserve, but now for this child as well. A few days later, despite my friend Eric receiving some bad news, Lucky's family could not be found, and the child would have to go to an orphanage. I stared at the little one for a while, feeling so much sympathy for him. He had adjusted very well, and just yesterday, Eric had taken him for a walk to see the lions. The boy had screamed with joy as he watched the lion cubs running around. It was truly magical to see the reserve, which Eric loved so much, through the eyes of a child. The experience was eye-opening for both of them. For Lucky, it was a new beginning, and for Eric, it was another reminder of how unpredictable life could be. Eric had become not just the protector of the animals in the reserve, but also a protector of a young boy who had found his way into his heart. Eric knew that as Lucky grew up, there would be countless questions in his mind about why he had been abandoned. While no one could give him the exact answers, there would always be someone who would tell him that his parents loved him. And more importantly, there would be someone who would tell him the story of a brave lion who had protected him and saved his life. A lion named Hope, and the person telling that story would be Eric, my dear friend. Eric decided that no orphanage would be for Lucky. He would adopt him in the coming months. The process of becoming Lucky's legal guardian was long and arduous, but in the end, when everything was finalized, they celebrated together. Father and son drove to see the mighty lions, enjoying the freedom of the open road and the warmth of the setting sun. Together, they embraced the next chapter of their lives, basking in the late afternoon light. In that moment, Eric felt at peace. He had saved Hope, and now he was offering the same kind of love and protection to Lucky, the boy who had unexpectedly entered their lives. Not far from there, Lucky spotted Hope as the old car slowly passed by. The lion noticed a little boy staring at him through the window. Hope lazily lifted his head and looked at the man who not only rescued him, but also added a chubby little boy to the mix. Eric couldn't wait to tell his son all about Hope's story as soon as he was old enough to understand that with a rescued lion and a child forming a new family, the boy would have a different kind of life. Dear friends, did you enjoy this story? What would you do if you were in Eric's position? Would you adopt the child or take him to an orphanage? Have you ever seen a lion? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and click the notification bell to receive the latest videos. If you want me to do any topic, please comment below. See you again, and thank you very much.